Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. With the power of your likes, comments, and you hitting the subscribe button, I will now balance the game as the avatar of Eve Echoes. Now, obviously, that's just me having a little bit of fun. However, let's actually talk about the unbalancing that just happened within the game. A massive amount of items have been added to the game without any real counter action or any real thought put into anything as far as I can tell. Now, this is a massive criticism directly at NetEase, and I'm actually just going to go through it from the point of the interdiction sphere, which is the biggest point of misinterpretation of putting something in from EVE Online. The interdiction sphere is a higher end gameplay device. As far as I can tell, it's really good for making big fights. Now, the way in which they introduced it was to basically play on the marketplace for events. They could have added another system into the game. They could have added T8 ship drops. You know, something big, something major that is just as expensive as the interdiction spheres, but that would really, really excite players. Uh, Battleship drops within the event. Now, that would also unbalance the gameplay, but the fact that multiple players could actually grab hold of it and start using them immediately would make a big difference. Like, for example, uh, you already have faced off against rattlesnakes and many of the ships within the factions, and there's a faction which totally isn't in the game, along with the Sisters of Eve. They could have made you take part in the event anomalies for this entire 10 days, and from them you get points to purchase the blueprints for those ships. So basically, you could get your Sisters of Eve blueprints, you can get the blueprints for the Stratos and so forth in that league. You can get the Orithos, you could get the Bellicose battleship. All of these blueprints ready, and you can build them up. This is something they could have done before they introduced the Modus Legion, because it's not yet in the game, and before they introduced the Sisters of Eve reward system, whatever it's going to be. But instead, they chose to introduce a heavy PvP item that is only effective for PvP. In PvE, it does have a play, but the only thing that it does change for PvE players is the amount of ISK they can make of the event. And as you can see, this massive boost that it started with is now dying out randomly and really, really fast. That's because massive numbers of players have lost their ships trying to gain these items in the nullsec, because in high sec you have to worry about the crooks. Basically, the guys will just jump into an anomaly, sit out because they can't really fight, and steal the loot at the last minute to go sell it on the market. And that's what has been happening in high sec areas, and that is really, really unfair. It was a poorly thought of method of getting this out there, and that loot was only worth ISK to the players within the anomaly. It wasn't worth anything else to them. The anomaly itself is worthless, and that is just the fact of the matter. Now, a lot of players haven't noticed the further aspects of the spheres and this event's negative in the game. This event is aimed for PvP players. It forces them to play a massive amount of PvE. To all of those who are going to criticize me about criticizing PvP, the event requires you to go into PvE to get the PvP items. That is one of the biggest things behind this entire event. Number two, the PvP is now blocking people from doing PvE within certain areas. Yes, you can farm in your own areas, but what about high conflict areas like Catch or the Low Sec, where there are three or four corps trying to fight for dominance within a sector? That means it's just fighting non-stop over and over, and all those players who have piled up losses over these 3 days, it's going to show just how poorly this event was made. Now, I know those are two massive negatives that I just spoke about, but it isn't yet over, it still gets worse. Now, moving on, the next thing that is wrong with this whole idea of the bubble is the bubble is so high level for this level of gameplay that it gives an unfair advantage to the players who use it. The fact that it can be deployed on a gate before sovereignty makes it an unfair advantage. Once sovereignty is out, you understand you want to protect your regions. However, you still don't own regions, and using the bubble on a gate at the moment is just you bullying a ton of players to take away all of their loot. And even within that whole system of looting in PvP fleets, it's very difficult to balance what you can take and what you can't take. Now, moving forward, the next step forward after all of this is going to be what needs to be done at a later date. Now, as I was saying, this is just the start of the issue when it comes to getting things done for PvP and PvE. Now, the bubble itself is a very, very unique gameplay item, and it does have a place in the higher game meta because there are other items that need to be introduced into the game before you use these bubbles, and that is bookmarking. So, bookmarking is basically making a custom map for yourself, a custom trade route. You take 182 jumps around the map to get to where you want to go to. That is a custom route. You take 15 jumps because the closest, shortest autopilot route it gives you is 25 jumps. So you cut across another region that it never takes you through because you know that shortcut exists. And there you go. Those are all of the things that you can bookmark. And within the bookmarks, you can also custom divert yourself through systems. And what does this mean? That means that within the system, you make a curved path to jump to a planet, jump to the next planet, then jump to the gate so that your angle is so small that if you get caught in an interdiction sphere, you're basically getting caught as you touch the gate and you jump through to the next sector. So the gate isn't affected by the interdiction sphere. Then the next thing on top of that would have been playing around with the larger aspects of the game, adding in bigger ships, harder to defeat ships, and therefore you needing to use the interdiction sphere to actually fight it. Now, the interdiction sphere is a very long acting weapon as well. It lasts for almost 4 minutes per bubble that is cast up, or sphere that is cast up, and it only has a 30-second downtime. That isn't enough time to actually make it balanced. That doesn't balance it out. It's too one way, one sided. Because even just disrupting a player for 30 seconds would be fine with the bubble. However, the fact that they extend it to uh, 4 minutes is really overkill. In 30 seconds, you literally can stop a player, disrupt the player, webify the player, and destroy them because that's all the time you need. However, with the ability to leave it up for minutes at a time, when you reach 2, 3, 4 minutes, it's already so overpowered that you have the advantage from the get go. Now, moving on, there are other things in the bubble that are unfair. And here is one thing that personally I've experienced. I have used the bubble to gate camp. And yes, it wasn't a very honorable thing to do. It was absolutely not a favorable thing in terms of fair combat. It doesn't introduce a balanced way of playing the game. It's absolutely one sided. So that's my evaluation on what I played when I was within the bubble. Now, within the bubble, if you are offline and you enter into the bubble, the moment someone tries to lock on you, you disappear from the map. Now, that is the way in which the bubbles work. So, instant disappearing because of offline autopilot protection. Now, when it comes to the offline autopilot protection, if you are flying through the nullsec, the the offline autopilot protection only affects frigates and transport ships. Now, that is really unfair as well because when it comes to being able to use it, you should be able to use it with any ship that you have. Different ships take different times to be protected. That is not fair. The moment the player is offline, the ship should instantly disappear the moment someone tries to target because you aren't there to help it fight along. If you AFK running, yes, it's understandable that you have the auto lockback feature to help you, but if you're offline, it should instantly make you disappear. However, it doesn't work the same for all ships. As I said, frigates and transport vessels disappear when they are targeted. Cruisers and battle cruisers actually remain in the fight because the moment someone locks onto them, they can disrupt them. It actually takes that long for the autopilot to actually kick in protection, which is absolutely unfair in terms of gameplay. They need to actually balance it out so that everybody can play. Now, the event, as it's being said, is very poorly planned. NetEase wasn't thinking wisely about the future of the gameplay. They decided to think about the PvP aspect of the game again and trying to bring it more to the EVE Online flow. Now, yes, it is taking it more close to EVE Online, but it's also killing the game base at a rapid rate. Players have lost up to 4 to 5 billion this weekend. I've personally lost 4, 5. I've lost half a billion this weekend because I don't really have a billion worth of ships at the moment. But just that loss alone should tell you that this isn't fair play. They aren't balancing out the way in which these events and anomalies play out for players. It's just a massive festival of we want to make it impossible for you to progress fairly in the game. We want PvP to be the only way for you to go, and we don't want you to have fun in PvE. We want it to only be a gameplay for our whiners, basically. Because the PvP players who have been nagging on the protections being taken away and everything were the whiners, basically, from day one. Now, I know that I did criticize the corps for not selling the spheres in the start when it was massive profit, and starting from today, it's worthless to players. And if they had done their whole system of selling it, they could have actually done something for their player base. But at the moment, basically, they wasted that sphere when they got it in the start because they could have literally gone this morning and got it for 100 million instead of 500 million that day. They literally lost 400 million ISK to poor decisions. And yeah, a lot of corps are subject to that failure. And some corps had 20 and 30 of them because the areas in which they were located had higher spawns. Now, this is also something which doesn't make sense. A spawn of the high level Inquisitor shouldn't be rare and relegated to certain territories only. If they were going to do this, they should have put it up on day one. Everybody should fight for Astoria, Paragon Soul. I'm just using those two areas because they're two of my favorite areas to mention. Everybody should have fought for those two areas at the bottom of the map because they're going to have the highest percentage drops of event loot and event items when we launch events. They should have given that to us on day 2 of the game. But no, instead you go into Nullsec and now all of a sudden one area will get the precious loot drops because they're in that area. Another area will get the Crimson Cemeteries and the haunted uh, events appear all over the map throughout low, null, high. It's everywhere. But the more rare ones are in the harder to reach areas, and they're within areas where massive corps have been set up and basically have started to build themselves up from the lower part of the map. And this is unfair because if you put it in low sec that you have to go and grab a hold of the precious materials, that makes it fair. That means that players can't just go and sit on a gate and wait for you to finish it, camp you at the bubble and steal all the loot of you. They have to come in and fight you where they may not have the advantage. You could be camping them out in low sec like this. And these are the things that they needed to think about, but as I've said before, certain game companies don't think ahead, they just think about what the Karens are saying, basically. And when I say Karens, I mean the same way in which it's referenced in culture right now. Karens are the whiny players who basically complain about every single thing just to get it their way. And in case you think I want it my way, I've actually enjoyed using the sphere. And when I say enjoyed, I mean I have overkilled in a sphere. At least 20 billion worth of damages have been done by me personally, and that is attacking players and inflicting damage. Now, considering that that's how much I'm saying that I've done myself, that should tell you that obviously I'm complaining against something that makes the game easier for me in PvP, and once more, a complaint on the side of not balancing things properly in the game. Now, moving on, there are so many things they could do to fix the game, and there are so many problems they have introduced with this last few patches. I think it will take me about a month to get through all of the complaints I have about them, but let's see what I can do in the next few days. Now, I'm hoping that you share your comments and other aspects of problems within this event and the bubbles. So, yeah, have a good day. Thank you all for watching.